everyone, Jamie Trull here, your favorite CPA and financial literacy coach. And today we're going to be talking about something timely, which is how to review your business financials. So I'm recording this in January, and that's when it's coming out, is January of 2024. So you might be in a place where you are reviewing your past year. You're trying to figure out how the heck to read that profit and loss statement of yours. What should you be looking at? How do you even review how you did last year? And so we're going to talk about all of that here today. Now, importantly, this isn't just important at the beginning of a year to look at last year. This is something that you can be doing on probably at least a quarterly basis in your business. But I typically spend quite a bit of time at the end of the year doing a full deep dive. So usually I'll spend, maybe sometimes like 3 or 4 hours at the end of the year going through all of my financials, really understanding what happened. And on the quarters, maybe 1 to 2 hours that I'm spending really diving in there. And that time is really well spent because that is going to give me so much information into what's going on in my business. So definitely don't wait until the end of the year. Sometimes we have a habit of doing that because we think we don't really have to worry about getting all of this together until it's time for taxes. But when we're doing that, we're missing out on so much great information that we could use to help make strategic decisions in our business. So if we know what's going on, we are better able to make those decisions about the products and services that we are putting out into the world, maybe the pricing of those products and services, understanding the profit margins of those, and really seeing what our costs look like, how much profit are we left with at the end of the day. So that's something we want to be doing on a regular basis. So when you're reviewing last year, the very first thing that you should do is get your profit and loss ready to go. And I would do that as quickly as you can in January, whether that's doing it yourself, using a bookkeeper, using a software, using a spreadsheet. It doesn't even matter. It just needs to be a profit and loss that shows the money that came in and the expenses that went out. Now, when I do my reviews, I typically am ignoring any of the accounting funny business. I know I'm a CPA, but honestly, things like depreciation, amortization, even some of the payments of debt, I put aside for right now because I really want to understand how my base business is doing. How am I doing when it comes to the money coming in from those that I serve and my audience and my customers, and the money going out for the expenses in my business? So before I do any adjustments, any craziness with the numbers, I just really like to look at them just pure as they are. So really quickly, I think it's easier sometimes to watch what you may do by watching somebody else do it. So I'm going to jump into a sample company in QuickBooks. Again, wherever your P&L is, this will work. I'm just going to give you some ideas for how you might want to look at it if you're not really sure what you should be looking at and what observations you need to be making. So we're going to jump into my dear friend Craig's Design and Landscaping Services, and we are going to go to reports. So if you have QuickBooks, this is where your P&L will likely be. Usually it's going to be a favorite. And we're going to jump in there and we're going to run it for last year at this point because I am recording this in January. So we're going to go for the full last year, and you need to make sure you press run report. And let's just verify it's for the right period. Yep, this is for the full year of 2023. And when we come down here, we can see there's lots of income categories where we come down to a total income for Craig of $10,200. And then we have all of his expenses listed out in detail down to the net income of $1,600-ish. Okay. So when you're looking at this, you might be saying, okay, great. So what exactly does this mean? Well, the first thing that you should do is just look at your P&L and see if anything looks weird, right? Is there anything that you're like, what is that? What's driving that? I didn't realize we spent so much on this. Or maybe there are things that are miscategorized. That often happens. I'm always doing recategorizations, usually in January, to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. So you can really kind of take a look at your overall P&L and just get a feel. So one of the things, if it were me reviewing this, the very first thing that would call attention to me is the fact that we have a pretty sizable chunk of his expenses in miscellaneous. So I would want to drill into that. What's pulling in there? Likely there will be some reclasses that we should make to maybe other places on the P&L. So that would probably be the first thing that I'm doing, because it really doesn't help me when a third of my expenses are just put into a miscellaneous bucket. Overall, we really shouldn't have a ton that ends up sitting in miscellaneous at the end of the day. For you, this might be a big number in Ask My Accountant if you're using QuickBooks, right? So really digging into that and making sure that you're categorizing things where they need to go is probably the very first thing. But just overall looking for anything that looks strange, miscategorized, or, just looks like it's not right. So again, if you want to look at your total income, how does that feel? Does it look right? Depending on what system you're using. If you're using a system, QuickBooks, for example, if things are not set up correctly, it could have the effect of doubling your income, right? So if it looks way too high, you might have a system issue going on. If it looks way too low, you might not be pulling in all of the income. You might not have all of your accounts plumbing in correctly, or you might need to go and do some expense categorization and make sure that everything is has been accepted and is into QuickBooks. So this is the first thing that I would do, is just look at it and see if anything looks weird to you. And then just another thing that I like to do is figure out, okay, at the end of the day, if we know that this P&L is correct, if we feel pretty good about it, how much of every dollar did I get to keep in my business this year or this quarter or this month, whatever time period you're looking at? And the way that we figure that out is we look at our total income, right? So we're going to come up here to the total income. For Craig, it's $10,200. And then we're going to come down here to the net income, which is about $1,600. Now, that's pretty easy math, but you might need to do that math on a calculator or something where it's going to be your net income over your total revenue, i.e. your total income that came in. And you're going to be able to see the percentage of every dollar that you kept. So in this case, for Craig, 16 cents of every dollar made it through the bottom line. So I just like to visualize it that way, right? Here's the amount coming in, and the amount you get to keep at the end of the day is profit. Now, depending on what type of entity you are, your salary may show up as an expense. So if you are a corporate entity, one of your line items might include your salary. Okay, so in that case, you might have a lower profit number, and that might be okay because you're also making salary from the business. But for Craig, clearly there's not even any salary listed here. So all of this is just his profit, and he needs to fully pay himself from this amount. That's not a whole heck of a lot, right? So if he's putting in the work to make $10,000, and at the end of the day, he's only making 16 cents on the dollar from all of that work he's putting in, there's probably some work Craig needs to do related to his income and his expenses, okay? Now, while we're talking about profit margins, one of the questions that I get a lot of times is, what's a good number to be left with at the end of the day? Out of every dollar, how much should I be keeping? What percentage profit margins should I have after expenses? And the answer is very much the age-old answer that accountants and lawyers and all the like will give you, which is, it depends. And as much as I hate to give you that answer, it really does depend. And one of the biggest things that it depends on, other than your industry, which really can have an impact, is really how many employees do you have in your business. If you are the only person working in your business and you're an LLC, not paying yourself a salary because you don't need to, right? Then ultimately, you're probably going to have fairly high profit margins, especially if you are in a service-based business. So service-based is going to be higher profit margins, especially when it's just you, versus product-based, where you're going to have some kind of cost of goods sold. So it really can range, but I'll give you an idea for me. When I first started my business, and it was primarily just me, with a little bit of help from a virtual assistant and some various expenses within my business, I had 70%-ish profit margins. So that was good. That means that 70 cents on every dollar was profit to me. And that's how I paid myself, was via that profit. Now that I have a team and I have employees on staff and I have more expenses and more kind of fixed things going on, I run it more like 30 to 40% profit margins, which still is great for me and I'm really happy with. But we do monitor that because we really want to see what's going on, and we're paying a lot of attention when there are dips in that to really understand what's happening behind the scenes so that we can fix it and make it better going forward. Now, the next thing that I would do when I'm reviewing a P&L, right, I would go in and look at it from a comparative basis. This P&L only means so much just looking at it in isolation, right? That's sometimes where we end up just scratching our head saying, what the heck am I supposed to do with this information? What I would do is next, I would go and display it by quarter or by month, some sort of comparative amount. So you can look at last year versus this year. You can look at it by month. I love the by month view because I just feel like I can see trends a lot better. I can see what happened with income, what happened with expenses. I can drill into it if anything looks strange. So in this case, you can see that we have Craig, and it's going to show us his business for the full year. Well, this might explain why Craig is in the spot that he's in, because he actually didn't have any income January through July. So that makes sense, right? He must have started his business in August. We can see how much he made by month, what his total income was, and he can understand how well he's doing. I would want to dig into what happened in December. Let's do more of that, right? How did you get this business in December? Especially as a landscaping company, you wouldn't think December would be such a big month, but for Craig and this fake company, apparently it was. Maybe he lives in Australia. I don't know. But if you come down here, you're going to be able to see all your expenses by month as well. And you can kind of compare what's happening with your expenses. What is getting more expensive? What is getting less expensive? Obviously, Craig had more expenses in December, but that makes sense because he also had more income in December. And so then you can come down here and see exactly what the net income was for each month. And really just looking at this and spending, it doesn't have to be a long time, maybe 5-10 minutes, making observations from what you see here. And if anything looks strange or you just aren't sure what's driving it, really drilling into that and understanding it. And that may give you some really important insights to either changes you need to make in your business or things that really worked well that will help you say, okay, I need to do more of what I did in December because that was my best month of the year. And so therefore, I'm going to spend more time trying to figure out how to recreate that in the future. So I would just definitely do a comparative review. Again, you can kind of, compare it to all kinds of different things. In QuickBooks, there is an easy way where you can actually compare it to different time periods. So we can put in some numbers and see what happens. You can run all kinds of reports. That's what I love about something like QuickBooks is it's going to let you run. And in this case, now I can see current versus prior year. Obviously, again, for Craig, because he just started his business, he doesn't have anything, but then it would tell you the change and the percentage change. So there's lots of different iterations. Find your favorite, right? Find your favorite iteration of your P&L that you like, and then go ahead and save the customization, right? And it'll show up on your dashboard and you can just go directly to that. I have one that is a monthly P&L. I have one that's a year over year, year to date comparison. You can create as many as you like, and then you have one touch access with it if you're using something like QuickBooks. Now, jumping out of the P&L, the next thing that I want you to really think about is how much did you pay yourself in your business, right? Determine what you actually paid yourself last year. Oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we're kind of paying ourselves a little bit haphazardly, right? Maybe if you're a corporation, you have a salary and then you're also taking draws, or perhaps you're just taking draws because you're just an LLC or a sole proprietor, right? Whatever it is, you want to actually add that up and say, how much did I actually pay myself last year? And how do I feel about that? So I would definitely dive into that a little bit. If you're curious, you can look at your bank account. You also might be able to find this information if you're using something like QuickBooks. That's going to show up as potentially owner's draws or amounts paid to owner, depending on how you classified those draws in your QuickBooks. It should be on your balance sheet. So those, if you are not taking a salary, those draws do not show up on your P&L. However, they will show up on your balance sheet, reducing the equity that you have in the business. Okay, so those are equity transactions, and it may say something like owner's pay and personal expenses or owner's draw, depending on what you have categorized it as. But check that and make sure that it vibes with what you actually believe you paid yourself last year. So that's important to really understand. And then you can make goals around how do we increase this for next year? How do we make more next year? So that's going to be really critical as a part of this, to be examining how much you actually paid yourself. Now, really quickly, I have one more bonus tip of things that you want to make sure that you're looking at, but I want to tell you about my annual planning guide that is totally free that you can grab. And it includes all the information I'm talking about here today, where you can kind of analyze your business performance from last year, but also plan your best year yet for the coming year. So in this case, that's 2024. So make sure to go to jamietrull.com/annual planner, and you can grab that planner while it's available. At some point, it may stop being available. However, you can go grab that right now, and it'll help you get a head start on this looking back at last year and also looking forward, which is the really, really key stuff, right, for the year to come. Now, my last kind of bonus thing that I always make sure that I am looking for at the end of the year when I'm doing a financial review is how much of what items did I sell at what price points, right? I want to see it broken down. I know a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're like, oh yeah, I kind of know that in my head, but put it on a piece of paper, put it on a worksheet. If you already have that information that you can pull out of a system like QuickBooks or another system where you're tracking your sales, right? Great. But ultimately, you want to know, what did you sell this year? right? What sold this year? And bonus points if you maybe want to even look at that on a monthly basis to see how much you sold and when, because that's also going to help you determine what to sell next year. I do that because my business is one where, if I'm selling anything related to taxes in, June, that's probably not going to get a whole heck of a lot of sales. However, I do sell my Hiring Your Kids toolkit in June, and that does really well because people are thinking about hiring their kids in the summertime. So really thinking about what sold well and when, and how do I then plan my year going into it and knowing what people are going to want. Right? So that's something that I highly recommend. And it feels a little tedious to sometimes sit down and do this. But again, the guide that I have will walk you through this and give you a place where you can actually fill this out for yourself. And I think there is so much you're going to be able to determine just by looking at that. You're going to have some aha moments as to what really worked in your business, maybe what didn't work in your business. Maybe there's a product or service you need to get rid of or reprice or something. And maybe there's something that you need to be promoting more because it's super popular. So definitely take the time to do that debrief. So often we just jump straight into the new year and miss all of the valuable treasure trove of information that last year can give us. So do not make that mistake. Spend the time. It's some of the most important time that you will spend all year, and it will help you really make goals for the year ahead that are going to be achievable and that you're going to have a true plan to get there. So thanks so much for joining me. Make sure to grab that planner that is on your screen right now. And also make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be putting out lots more information about planning and making this the most profitable year yet for you in your business, so you don't want to miss anything.